Headlines from May 1926. Harry Houdini exposes fraudulent fortune tellers in front of Congress. Roald Amundsen flies over the North Pole in an airship, and 3.7 million British workers go on strike. This is the Old Hat Revue. 800 feet long and 5 million cubic feet of gas. The Goodyear Zeppelin Company plans to build a dirigible to those specifications, making it the largest airship ever constructed and, with an expected range of 8,000 miles, could possibly be the first to cross the Atlantic Ocean. By all accounts, the airship industry can look forward to a bright future. Norwegian Arctic explorer Roald Amundsen has completed his daring trek to the North Pole in his massive dirigible, Norge. Amundsen and his crew took flight from Spitsbergen on May 11th on their 71-hour transpolar expedition. At 2:30 a.m. on May 12th, the Norge descended low over the ice, slowed its engines, and dropped the Norwegian, American, and Italian flags onto the ice, representing the nationalities of those aboard. The crew celebrated their accomplishment and then set out for Alaska. The second half of the journey proved to be more dramatic than the first, much to the intrepid crew's detriment. After flying through a heavy storm, ice formed on Norge's propellers and then broke off and was hurled through the fragile fabric hull of the airship. The crew was unable to patch the breach and soon after was engulfed in a dense fog, losing contact with the rest of the world. The sun compass had frozen over and, being so close to the North Pole, the magnetic compass spun listlessly in circles. Braving fog, shifting ice packs, and the Alaskan mountains with no navigational aids, the crew pushed on and eventually sighted Point Barrow, Alaska, and landed safely on May 13th, transmitting the message, "Transpolar flight successful, respectful greetings." The U.S. Navy is hard at work raising the sunken submarine S-51. Air-filled pontoons, heavy diving suits, decompression chambers, and the sister submarine S-50 are all on hand to raise the wreck and recover the bodies of the 37 men who were on board at the time of the collision with the steamship City of Rome in 1925. An astounding 400 horsepower sit under the hood of this automobile designed for breaking the land speed record and, hopefully, not the bones of J.C. Perry Thomas at the wheel. The 1926 Indianapolis 500 was a spectacle of speed as automobiles roared 160 laps around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Big personalities such as Dave Lewis, Red Phil Schaefer, and Frank Lockhart duked it out in the early laps, jockeying for lead position. English driver John Dill took on the somber role of driving Herbert Jones's car after Jones fractured his skull in qualifying and, tragically, succumbed to his injuries the morning of the race. After a brief rain delay, the race continued and Frank Lockhart claimed the checkered flag in front of a crowd of 150,000 cheering fans and reached a top speed of a whopping 115 miles per hour. The 52nd Kentucky Derby ran at Churchill Downs before a crowd of 70,000 on May 15th. Early favorite Pompey took on competitors such as Roy Crofter, Cantor, Bubbling Over, Rockman, and Baggage. Bubbling Over took an early lead and refused to give it up, crossing the finish line and claiming the $52,600 purse, as well as coming within 2/5 of a second of breaking the record set by Old Rosebud in 1914. Baggage, in a remarkable display of tenacity, took second place and Pompey rounded out the top three. What's a leg, more or less? Kansas resident William Saylor found this three-legged filly running with a pack of wild horses in Colorado, apparently unhampered by its inexplicable condition. Limpy Joe, the globe-trotting seagull, so named for his injured leg, has taken to roost on the dollar steamship liner President Garfield. Limpy Joe has befriended Captain Lowry, with whom he walks the deck, and the crew have begun to regard the gull as a lucky bird. Garbed in a bow of ribbon and slippers, this charming young lady is but one of a jazz band in a Vienna cafe. The Viennese enjoy this entertainment. It can't be done on Broadway. yet. Sewing is a dying art among young women, and that's a good thing, according to Miss Violet Cohen of the Manhattan Trade School for Girls. Miss Cohen points out that, when given the choice between the mending and a career, more and more women are choosing the latter. And if modern women can have a career, then modern women can pay someone else to do the sewing. Vera, Countess of Cathcart, last seen detained on Ellis Island for moral turpitude, has announced she will not be marrying her fiancé, Ralph Neal, though she intends to continue the engagement. This announcement came as a surprise to Neal, who had assumed being a fiancé meant wedding vows in the future. Charles and Stella Zoich have remarried each other 32 years after their divorce, having finally found true love again. Queen of the Rum Runners, Gertrude Lythgoe, has declared she prefers freedom to marriage. Lythgoe skippered her own rum runner, traveled from the West Indies to Alaska, and is one of the largest rum exporters in Nassau, selling primarily to bootleggers intent on taking the illegal wares stateside. The Queen of the Rum Runners has stated her desire to never marry, saying freedom is too pleasant, despite the foretellings of her personal astrologer, who has seen a future of romance written in the stars. Harry Houdini descended upon Washington, D.C. to testify before a House subcommittee in favor of a bill aimed to crack down on fraudulent mediums. Houdini is famously skeptical of the paranormal, and what followed was several days of spectacular chaos. Houdini's investigator, Miss Rose Mackenberg, donned disguises and went to 10 Washington, D.C. mediums to collect evidence of fraud, and in addition to fraud, she found the mediums claimed Senators Capper, Watson, Dill, Fletcher, and even President Coolidge as regular customers. As the mediums present scrambled to defend themselves, Houdini in turn named them all crooks and frauds, aptly pointing out it is strange that mediums have to charge $1 or $2 for predictions when every day they could clean up a fortune by foretelling what is going to happen in Wall Street. The second hearing only flared tempers further as Houdini dropped $10,000 cash on the committee table and offered it to any medium who can genuinely prove their ability to see the future. The cash remained unclaimed. The third day of the hearing culminated in Houdini performing a seance himself. Using his knowledge of sleight of hand and sparing no pomp theatrics, Houdini seemed to conjure a message from Benjamin Franklin on a slate before the committee's very eyes, only to explain how his trick was done and shatter both the illusion and the medium's case. The charge of disorderly conduct has a wide range of applications, including apparently aggressive seasoning. Mrs. Mary Prettyman has brought her own daughter before the court, accused of using excessive quantities of salt and pepper. It seems there is more to this case than just a heavy-handed shaker, so the court is advised to take the accusations with a grain of salt. 3 car thieves, aged 15, 16, and 17, were sentenced to in early bedtime. Their sobbing mothers begged Judge W.W. McCrory for leniency during their trial, and the judge obliged, on the condition that their mothers would personally promise to tuck their boys into bed at 9:30 sharp every night until they turned 21 years old, suffering imprisonment if they failed to do so. Jewel thief Waller Willis has been caught and, upon his arrest, admitted to police that he had been throwing engraved jewelry in the sewers so the initialed pieces could not be traced back to him. Detectives dragged the sewers for hours, with crowds gathering to watch all the while. The fruits of their labor yielded only 2 cufflinks, which were not identified. Centenarians galore! A retirement home in New York is throwing a collective birthday party for all of its residents who have surpassed 100 years in age. The guests of honor include Beryl Bonner, 105, Goldie Miller, 101, Oda Klatskin, 101, and Sophia Mass, 104, each with a cake boasting more than 100 candles. When asked if they have any other activities planned for their birthday, Oda and Sophia replied, "No, sir, not a thing." Coup in Poland. Marshal Józef Pilsudski has seized power, ousting President Wolszkowski and naming Kazimierz Lars Bartel as Premier. The streets of Warsaw are visibly shell-damaged, and General Haller is sitting in Ponzan with troops ready to march for a counter-revolt, declaring that terror reigns in Warsaw. Just what will happen next, nobody pretends to know. A general strike has been declared in the United Kingdom as 3.7 million workers walked out in protest of worsening worker conditions across the country. Docks, print shops, road haulage, and railways all fell silent as workers made their demands known. Crowds numbering in the hundreds of thousands gathered in cities across the country to chant, sing, and engage in cheerful commiseration. King George declared a state of emergency, and Prime Minister Baldwin responded to the peaceful crowds by calling in military force. The Royal Navy anchored in London, Liverpool, and Hull. Tanks and armored cars staged in city parks, and troops deployed nationwide, including 100,000 special constables from Scotland Yard. Prime Minister Baldwin's government went as far as to propose plans to drop tear gas on protesters from a squadron of Royal Air Force planes above London. Chancellor of the Exchequer, Winston Churchill, called for the arrest of strike leaders. Even Leon Trotsky weighed in from Moscow, urging the British proletariat on. With transportation at a standstill, Londoners turned to bicycles, roller skates, and horse and buggy to traverse their city. An end to the strike was reached on May 12th, as workers agreed to negotiate further with employers and the government as labor resumed. Though the strike was over, the labor disputes were not, and the disgruntled miners remained exactly where they had started. While British statesmen pored over industrial problems during the strike, this reflective Miss Puss sat around 10 Downing Street and did some studying on her own account. That's all for this month. Thank you for watching. Be in bed by 9:30, and have yourself a newsworthy day.